Most people spend their whole lives waiting to feel ready, ready to love someone fully, ready to say what they mean, ready to stop running from the things that scare them. I waited too. And now at 98 years old, my name is Edward, and I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me when I still had enough time left to use it. I was born in a small town in rural Pennsylvania in the winter of 1926. My father was a coal miner, a quiet man who smelled of earth and iron, and never once said he loved me out loud, though I believe now, looking back across all these decades, that he did in every way he knew how. My mother baked bread every Thursday morning, and the smell of it would fill the whole house before any of us were even awake. That smell, the warmth of that kitchen, the sound of my younger sister humming something she'd half remembered from church, that was my whole world for the first 12 years of my life. And I didn't know then how badly I would one day ache to return to just one ordinary Thursday in that kitchen, standing there in my bare feet on the cold linoleum, not saying anything, just being there. That is the first thing I want you to understand. The moments you will miss most are almost never the ones you thought to treasure while you were living them. They are the quiet ones, the unremarkable ones. The ones where nothing special happened except that the people you loved were still alive and nearby, and you were all breathing the same air without even thinking about it. I was 17 when the war came for me. I won't spend much time there because honestly I've spent more of my life trying to set it down than I ever did carrying it, and I don't want to pick it up again here. What I will say is this: war teaches you things about yourself that peacetime simply cannot. It shows you your own edges, the places where you are stronger than you believed, and the places where you simply break. I broke in a few places over there. I came home in the spring of 1945, and I was 20 years old, and I looked 40, and I felt about 110. I met my wife Margaret at a dance hall in Pittsburgh in the fall of that same year. She was wearing a yellow dress, and she was laughing at something her friend had said. And I remember thinking that I had not heard genuine laughter in so long that the sound of it almost stopped me in the middle of the room. I stood there like a fool just watching her laugh. My friend Gerald nudged me and said something I won't repeat, but I ignored him and walked over and introduced myself. And she looked at me with those dark eyes and said very calmly, "I was wondering when you were going to come over." She'd seen me standing there the whole time. That was Margaret. She always saw more than she let on. We were married in June of 1946. We had 3 children, a son named Robert, a daughter named Patricia, and a second son, Thomas, who we lost when he was 4 years old to a fever that came on fast and didn't give us any warning and didn't give us any mercy. I will not pretend that I have ever fully made peace with losing Thomas. I don't think a parent ever does. What I will say is that losing him changed the way I looked at the other 2. I held them differently after that. Not with more love, because I don't think that was possible, but with a kind of fierce, quiet gratitude that I'm not sure I would have found any other way. I worked for 31 years as a machinist. It was not glamorous work and it was not easy work, but I was good at it, and it fed my family, and I was proud of that. There is a kind of dignity in skilled labor that I think has been forgotten in many circles today. The satisfaction of making something real with your hands, something that functions, something that fits together exactly as it should, that is not a small thing. I carried that pride with me for a long time. I still do. Margaret and I had 49 years together before she passed in 1995. I was 69 years old. And I remember thinking very clearly that I did not know how to be a person without her nearby. We had disagreed about 1,000 things over those 49 years. We had frustrated each other, disappointed each other, misunderstood each other in ways that sometimes took weeks to untangle. But she was the steadiest presence in my life. She knew me in a way that nobody else ever did, or ever has. And when she was gone, there was a silence in the house that I never entirely got used to, even after all these years. I want to say something here that I think is important, And I want to say it plainly because I don't have the patience for circling around it. I spent too many years of my marriage believing that love was something you demonstrated through action, through working hard, through providing, through showing up in practical ways. And all of that matters, it truly does. But what Margaret needed from me, what she asked for more times than I can count, and what I was too stubborn or too frightened or too locked inside myself to consistently give her, was simply to be heard, to have me sit down across from her and listen without already forming my response, to let her finish, to ask her what she meant, rather than assuming I already knew. I was not always good at that. I got better as I got older, the way most people do, but I got better later than I should have, and I am telling you this because you still have time to get better sooner. Robert is 74 now and lives in Ohio. Patricia is 71 and lives not far from here, and she visits me every Sunday and brings those cookies I like, even though my doctor has opinions about that, which I have chosen to largely ignore at this stage of my life. They are good people, my children. They became good people not because of any single thing Margaret and I did right, but because of the accumulation of small choices made over decades, the times we stayed in the room instead of walking out of it, the times we apologized when it would have been easier not to, the times we showed up even when we were tired, even when it cost us something. I think about what I would tell my younger self if I somehow could, and the honest answer is that I'm not entirely sure my younger self would have listened. There is a particular kind of stubbornness that belongs to youth, a certainty that you understand things that you actually only understand much later, and I don't know that any amount of wise counsel penetrates that fully. But if I could reach him, that young man who came home from the war with broken edges and a guarded heart, I would tell him to be less afraid of being known. I would tell him that the walls he built to protect himself also kept out the very things he needed most. I would tell him that strength is not the absence of softness, that a man can be both solid and open, that you do not have to choose. I would also tell him, and this is something I feel strongly about, that the life you are building is not separate from the living you are doing right now. I used to think of my real life as something slightly ahead of me, something I was working toward, some state of arrival that would eventually come when things settled and the hard part was finished. But the hard part is never quite finished, and the life you are building is exactly and only this: the texture of your ordinary days, the quality of your attention, the way you treat the people who are standing in front of you right now. That is the whole thing. There is no other version waiting for you somewhere else. I am 98 years old. I have outlived my wife, one of my children, most of my friends, and both of my younger siblings. I have watched the world change in ways that sometimes astonish me and sometimes grieve me, and I have tried with varying success to stay curious rather than bitter about all of it. Some days are easier than others. Some mornings I wake up and the light comes through that window over there, and something in me just feels quietly glad to be here for one more day of it, even at this age, even with all the aches and limitations that come with it. The gladness surprises me sometimes. I didn't necessarily expect it. If you are young and you are listening to this, I want you to know that the life ahead of you is larger than anything you can currently imagine, and also more fragile than you are probably willing to believe. Both of those things are true at the same time. The people you love will not always be there. The time you have with them is not guaranteed. I know that sounds like something people say, something you've heard before, something that lands and then fades, but I am 98 years old, and I have lived on the far side of every loss I am describing, and I am telling you it is real. The time is real. The people are real. Don't let the ordinary days pass without noticing them. Don't save the gratitude for later. I have said what I wanted to say. I don't know how many mornings I have left, but I know they are fewer than the ones behind me, and I find I am at peace with that in a way I couldn't have predicted when I was younger. There is a kind of completeness that comes if you are lucky and if you have paid attention. And I feel something like that now. Not every question answered, not every regret dissolved, but a sense that the life was real and full and worth every hard day of it. Take care of your people. That's what I keep coming back to. In the end, that's the whole thing. Take care of your people while you still can.